keeping you connected and protected.
Welcome to Dask Talk, the essential podcast on distributed antenna systems and in-building communication. Hosted by Peter, VP of Gamma, and Philip Nicholas. This Gamma Electronics series focuses on emergency response and safety. Join us as we navigate the challenges of building effective communication systems for North America's first responders. We delve into the advancements in emergency responder radio systems and the transformative impact on new technologies. Tune in for insightful discussions aimed at increasing knowledge and awareness in the DAS field. Whether you're a professional or an enthusiast, Dask Talk is your gateway to understanding the nexus of technology, safety, and communication.
Well, hey guys, it's Gil at Gamma. Hope you're doing well. Excited to bring you another exciting episode of Dask Talk. There's a lot going on in the industry right now. We are planning in 2 weeks to do a Dask Summit in Concord, North Carolina. And so it kind of started as this thing of could we do some training for some AHJs? Turned into a full day. Now it's a 2-day thing. We have some great partners that are joining us. And one of those is iBwave. And we have Robin Mitchell on with us, who's the sales engineering manager. Robin's been on the show with us before. That was a great episode. Got a lot of positive, great feedback about just talking about design practices. But they're going to be teaching a class, surveying, designing, and analyzing public safety networks. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that in preparation for the summit, and to hopefully kind of whet everybody's appetites to want to be part of that, to attend, to really learn. So whether you're an AHJ or if you're an integrator, there's some really good information they want to share. So Robin, again, thanks for being on the show with us. Any kind of initial thoughts or anything since the last time you were on with us?
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate the invite. Looking forward to the summit. We've had quite a few things taking place in the background since we last spoke. Some new solutions that will help make not only the system integrator, but also the AHJ's job easier. We've been hard at it in the lab, coming up with some new ways that will make not only the introduction to iBwave easier, but the integration with both personas, how they can work better together from start to finish and keep in sync along the way. So it's really exciting what we have in play. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we get into things, but we're excited about it. We've got some things that I think will make the industry happy about what we're doing. And definitely the goal is always make their job easier.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh, no, I appreciate you being on it. And especially just really appreciate you guys being, a partner with us with this summit, because education, we've kind of been put in an interesting position where people have just been asking us for education. Where can we go? What can we do? Being involved with Dask University, and then, just this summit that has just grown into this event that it has. It's really, we're all really pumped for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm excited to, just to be able to share all that knowledge that's within that industry with the folks that are going to attend. So let me ask you why, so we're talking about survey, designing, and analyzing. So why is that course needed in our industry? Share with us a little bit about that.
Excellent question. A lot of times when you're working in the public safety industry, you see that there's a lot of disconnect between the AHJ, the AHJ requirements, and the system integrators. And of course, the building owners. Most building owners have no idea what they need as far as the requirements for providing public safety radio communication inside their building. Most don't realize, especially if it's a new building or new property to that area, have no idea that they're required to supply or provide radio coverage inside their facility. Of course, the amenities, right? You need to have lights, you need to have water, you need to have gas. All those utilities, are standard. They know that, but a lot of times it's a huge surprise that radio communication, well, maybe Wi-Fi. They realize, we need to have Wi-Fi, but not as a requirement to public safety. So when they learn that there's an expense that they're required to take hold of, it's a shock. So when they have to bring a third-party system integrator to do a site walk and to tell them what's required. And when they see that price tag, it is a lot of times overwhelming, and it's not part of the budget. And so that can actually delay the process for them, the building owner, to get notice of occupancy, right? So they need that letter of occupancy approval to be able to provide services inside that building. Once they understand what's required, if the system integrators have already been working in that county or that jurisdiction, they already know what to expect. And if the AHJ is already familiar with working with new building owners or the new codes that have been put in place with the NFPA 1222 or any of the other code requirements. It works great. But a lot of times you have new system integrators, you have new building owners, and you have AHJs that may not be as knowledgeable as they would like to be to guide those system integrators to meet those needs. Working from, as I like to say it, working from the same sheet of music. So if everybody has the same sheet of music, they know the cadence, they know what the tempo is, they know the song they need to be playing, they can work together in harmony. But a lot of times it's disjointed. There's a lot of start and stops, a lot of start over, do it again, and you don't know why. But if we're all working from the same sheet of music, it makes everybody's job easier. So from the start to finish, and we've got some ideas that will help make that go a whole lot smoother for all the key stakeholders. Some things that we think we like to call best practices, and some things that we'll introduce there at the summit that will make everybody's job easier and more enjoyable. It's one thing for it to be easier, but if it's still not fun, right? If you still have to look for things that should be obvious, right? Why is it this hard? Everything shouldn't be this hard. So let's make some things easier for everybody so we can all work together in harmony.
Yeah, well, and I think you touched on, two really great things, especially in terms of why do we need this class? The price, because, people just don't know, like you're talking about building owners. I was on the integration side for almost 20 years, and you would meet with somebody, and it's not like it's a $5,000 bill. They get bids, and it's like, well, this one's $50,000, this one's $100,000. So it's all over the place, and they're shocked because they're like, we didn't plan for this. You're telling me that in order to open my building, I got to spend six figures. And then the other part, so the price is one, but then the other part is the time factor, the delays, because this is not a system that it will go in a week. I mean, it could take months. And based here, like for me in Colorado, I mean, I've had folks, end users, building owners who are like, oh, I know the people at the city of Denver. I'll be able to do something for you. And I'm like, hey, if you could, that'd be great. That would help us out. But the reality is it doesn't work that way. So I think you hit the nail on the head with the importance of it, because the price factor, and to get this right, to educate people so they know, if they're looking at different numbers, well, there are disparities. There are reasons why those numbers could be different. So to get them educated on that, and then also to kind of set their expectation, this isn't going to happen tomorrow. Maybe, it's going to take a little bit of time, but you're going to get something that's right. So no, that was, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. So let me ask you, so we're kind of talking about, you're talking about having great ideas, and there are kind of three pieces to what we were talking about with your training that you're going to be doing in a couple of weeks. So surveying, designing, and analyzing. So can you touch on surveying just a little bit? I mean, what are some of those ideas, or maybe a few of those little best practice tidbits or something that we can talk about a little bit?
Sure. So when you initially start talking about surveying, go to the initial thought is, okay, I need to get inside the building and survey the building, do a walk test, or even a grid test. One of the things becomes an afterthought, or one of those things you think about, boy, I wish I'd done this from the beginning, is doing a survey outside the building. Who's your donor site outside the building? Are you sure it's the one that the AHJ told you to use as your donor site? Could there be another donor site that's stronger that you're going to have to wrestle with best server when you place that Yagi antenna on top of the building? But if you do an initial site survey outside the building, not just the parking lot, but all around the perimeter of the building, because you're not really sure where you're going to have to point that Yagi until you get on top of the building. But having some idea of who the best server is, or what the coverage is outside the building, will help make things a lot easier on the back end. Because you want to be able to do a before and after shot coverage or survey of that to make sure, one, that the donor or the best server was the same one you started out with. There hadn't been any changes to not only the network, but the surrounding buildings, billboards that go up. A lot of construction can take place over 6 months or a year, depending on how long it takes for you to get this system in, get it, all the equipment in, all the approvals done before you actually turn it up. And then the coverage, once you turn it up, are we bleeding outside that building? If we didn't do a proper analysis with the design to make sure we're minimizing or mitigating the signal leakage outside the building with that design, you want to be able to validate that on the post walk or post survey once that system goes in. So I kind of threw something that happens in the middle during the design, but you want to capture during the survey front end, good awareness of what's happening outside the building. When you do the in-building tests, you want to make sure you have good building floor plans. So when you do your survey, you're able to identify where you are easily. Sometimes you don't get AutoCAD drawings, which is the industry standard. You want to make sure that it's well documented. Floor is labeled properly. The floor, you understand the different floor layouts for each floor if there are multiple floors in the building. And what's funny is it up to date? You can get some floor plans and there's a wall where there wasn't a wall in the floor plan, but you run into a wall during your site survey. So not only being able to capture the data for that signal inside the building, but any signal impacting changes to the floor plan, any mitigating factors that could impact not only the placement of the coverage antennas, but where you will plan to run in cables, your cable routes. So with iBwave, we call that annotations. So annotation could be a photo, video, a text note, or even a voice note that could be geocoded to that location with a push pan or an annotation, which is really helpful in an area where you your designer would have liked to have placed an antenna, but because it's an atrium, it's open air to the floor above, and where logically he would have placed an antenna, no, that's open air. You can't place an antenna there. But the designer knowing that on the front end saves a whole lot of time and headache later on in the design process. So that survey piece is extremely important, not just capturing the grid tests based on the NFPA requirements, the 1222 requirements, but also understanding the floor plan layout, the different floors on each floor, and even doing a survey on the top floor, on the penthouse, where that donor antenna is going, that Yagi antenna is going to be placed. You need to be able to make sure that what you thought was happening as the best server on the ground level is the same on that top floor, because it may not be due to building terrain issues, building height. You could have a different donor antenna than you thought you were going to have on the ground level. So those things are important to be able to determine on the front end during the initial site survey. And once again, pointing that donor antenna where you think it should go, capturing satellite imagery and marking up that satellite image with the donor site location, as well as any other mitigating factors on the top of that roof. Maybe air conditioning units could be in the way. Or maybe a sign, an exterior sign. I want to place an antenna here, but there's a sign on the edge or the parapet of that building. No, you can't place a Yagi antenna here. So there's all those mitigating factors that you need to know on the front end of the design, not just walking the building for coverage, but making sure.
And I like what you're talking about in terms of annotation too, because I don't know how many, I don't want to say, it could be hundreds in my career. It could be more than that, of just, site surveys where I would go with one of my network engineers. So they would have a spec A, or they would have whatever data collection device, and it could be on a bid walk. So there could be 3 or 4 other integrators or more. And a lot of times I would just help them, like you're talking, it was almost like I was the annotator, because it was like just things about, closet locations, what the space was like, what wall, because you could take a picture, which is great, but to make little notes, or like you're talking about an atrium, and maybe a cable pathway could only come from the south. You could only pull in a certain direction. And so I love that, because all those little nuances, that's what's important in doing, I guess leading up to, as we're talking about design, to be able to take all that survey data. And now, it's like, okay, let's pull all that together. And now let's put a design together that's going to work, that's going to be cost effective, and really do what we're all trying to do, is to keep people safe inside buildings. So in terms of, that's awesome on the survey side. So what are your thoughts on the design? What are some of those new little best practices or things that we can expect to see?
Wow. So we've got some things that have been in place for a while, but actually we haven't seen a lot of, I guess, real industry adoption, but it's definitely going to make the job easier for the designer. Things that we've talked about, briefly introduced earlier, about signal leakage, right? During your design phase, if the building is properly modeled, you've got the building materials for the exterior of the building model, the interior of the building model, the building properly scaled and aligned. When you do this signal leakage map, you can see how much of that signal is going to penetrate the building and impact that macro or the outdoor network, which is going to be really key when it comes to that near far effect. We also have a map for near far effect now. So that's new to the industry that we're trying to evangelize and get people to have that awareness. This will actually help your understanding of the impact of that design on the front end rather than finding that on the back end when somebody's out there doing a test and God forbid is doing an emergency and you didn't account for that. And now you've got some first responders that can't respond because as soon as someone keys up near under an antenna, that chief whoever your commander is that's at that rig, right? That fire truck, that rig outside the building, and your signal is leaking from the in-building system out 30 feet, 40 feet outside the building. And now it's being keyed up by that commander. And now you've just lost communication because due to the near far effect. So they're fighting each other. So being able to find out on the front end, we need to bring that signal leakage in. We need to control it. We've got too much penetrating the building. Not only that, what about signal leakage between floors? Say, for instance, you've lost fire on a particular floor, and the first thing that goes out is going to be that antenna, right? We may have the best fire-rated cable that money can buy, but that plastic antenna is going to go first, right?
Yeah. Yep, it's
Once
true.
you lose that plastic antenna, you lose coverage on that floor. But do you have enough coverage from the floor above or the floor below that can still provide secondary service to that floor? Wow, well, it'd be great to know that during the design phase. Some counties actually have that as a requirement. FDNY, they actually have that as a requirement. Some counties don't, but it's good to know that on the front end of the design and instead of finding that out during an emergency situation. And then, of course, we've got some other cool maps like uplink maps. So we have uplink to the radio, uplink to the antenna. So we've got some really cool maps that's going to make that job a whole lot easier to be addressed in the training. And what maps are required? What are the best practices maps to be included in your design package? And how to read that design, making sure the legend is clear and you have legend placement. So not just the legend for the heat map, but legend for the materials. It would be wise to know what kind of building materials are being modeled. And just in case a system integrator is not really sure or educated, they may not have the proper materials. So in a stairwell, instead of using concrete, they might be using drywall. They say, oh, we've got great coverage in the stairwell. Well, it wasn't modeled properly. And so now you go to do the site walk and you go to the stairwell and you have no signal. Well, what happened? Yeah. It wasn't clearly documented. It wasn't caught during the design phase. And so when you got to do the implementation, oh boy, now we got to go back. And now that 6-month window is turned into an 8-month window. You added 2 more months because I just got to go back and design and figure out what I got to move these into. So now it's more costly. Time, money, manpower. Yeah, all of that's just gotten more expensive.
Yeah,
so those are just some of the things that can happen on the design phase that we'll address in the class and what the AHJs need to look for. And helpful things for the system integrators too, to provide as much information and easily provide it during the design phase to the AHJ, so to make it easy for them to approve that project on the first submittal. Our goal is to have that submittal approved on the first try.
Well, are you guys, I mean, I'm assuming you will. I just love that fact because, like I said, I was an integrator for so long, and for a lot of portion of that, a lot of years or whatever, you almost feel like you're working in a vacuum because you're trying to get that information you need. It could be from a building owner, it could be from the AHJ. Shoot, it could be from another integrator who had done this project, 10 years ago, and now it's a hospital that's expanding. And so I just love the fact, like you're saying, you're going to talk to the both personas. I mean, everybody's on the same sheet music, fingers crossed, of the AHJ and the integrator. And what I'm hoping is that there's going to be just great dialogue and just, I'm assuming, a great question and answer session too, where this stuff could come out. And it's all not going to be, not that it wouldn't be pleasant, but you know what I mean? I hope there's some, a little bit of controversy in a way, or you're going to challenge people's thinking to really hopefully change minds that we're all in this together. Let's do this right. Let's simplify this. Let's have a little more common sense. Like you're saying, what's required for the submittal packages? What are the expectations for the integrators? And a lot of that, like we're saying, it comes down to the basics of, well, you need to be looking at the surveying it. You need to be looking at designing it. And we haven't really got a chance to talk about the analyzing it at all. But I'm really excited about that, and I hope that people will come, and be part of it. We've had a great response already. So many people have RSVP'd, both AHJs and integrators. But no, I'm really looking forward to this, Robin. And I just want to just thank you again for your guys' time. We didn't get to really talk too much about analyzing, but come check it out, everybody. Come hear what iBwave has to say and to teach, and let's continue this dialogue of just keeping people safe in buildings. So, no, Robin, I want to thank you again. Any kind of closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Sure, just a couple of things. One, if the AHJs know how to make it easier for the system integrators to get started and hit the ground running, it'll make the AHJ jobs a whole lot easier. So we've got some things that you can help you create a template on your website that as soon as the system integrators are ready to get started, they can download the template and know all that information that you require up front that will minimize a lot of back and forth, a lot of finger pointing to eliminate all of that. You're on the same sheet of music. And then being able to review that documentation using our Viewer Plus solution. So we've got some things that we're going to talk about with Unity that's going to make them work together on the same sheet of music in harmony, and the Viewer Plus solution that will actually help the AHJs review that documentation and deal with that analysis that we didn't get to here, but we'll definitely dig into at the summit.
Absolutely. Right on. Well, thanks again. Well, again, great episode of Dask Talk. I want to thank you for joining us, and just encourage you, come, August 5th and 6th in Concord. I don't know how they pronounce it, North Carolina, but come out and just get trained, get educated. And again, Robin, thanks so much. And I look forward to seeing you. I'll be manning the Gamma booth or Gamma table there. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Dask Talk by Gamma, keeping you connected and protected.